The sand was black and felt like hot needles under my fingernails as I dragged myself out of the surf. I didn't have the strength to stand. I just lay there, my cheek pressed against the wet grit, smelling the heavy scent of rotting vegetation and salt. Behind me, the life raft was nothing more than a yellow smear against the gray, churning Indian Ocean. I watched it drift away and felt a sudden, sharp flash from my childhood kitchen, the smell of burnt toast and the sound of my mother's radio. It was a strange memory to have while dying. I'm special ops. I've been trained to survive most places Americans can't find on a map, but 5 days without water turns a soldier into a ghost. My Beretta was a paperweight. I remember looking at the wood line and thinking, if a crab walks out of these trees right now, I'm just a very expensive, immobile meal. I woke up to a sound that bypassed my ears and went straight to my spine. Terminal screaming. It was high-pitched, vibrating with a terror so raw it made my own teeth ache. I moved through the brush on my stomach, the dry leaves scratching against my neck. I saw 20 torches flickering like orange eyes against the dark canopy. I stayed low, pressing my face into the damp mulch until I could taste the rot. Then I saw the nightmare. The men looked indigenous, but they were wearing scavenged pieces of Western clothing. A Nike headband, tattered Tommy Hilfiger polo. The leader wore a crown made of human jawbones, the teeth catching the torchlight as he moved. I watched them tie a man down and a woman to the trees. I saw the flash of bone-handled knives, but the horror wasn't the ceremony, it was the witness. Standing among the torches was a white man in his 40s. He was wearing crisp blue jeans and a button-down polo shirt. I stared at his clean, starched collar and thought, why is this guy dressed for a Sunday brunch watching people get butchered? He had his hands in his pockets. He wasn't flinching. He was nodding, like he was approving a business proposal. After they left, I crawled into the clearing. I found the discard pile, Japanese children's books, a red sneaker for a 6-year-old girl. Then, I found a single crisp American $1 bill half buried in the red mud. I gripped the bill until my knuckles went white. This wasn't a lost tribe. I spent the next 3 days living like a ghost. This is where the training takes over. You don't just watch, you catalog. 13 combatants, slender, muscular, armed with stone axes. On the second night, I was nearly caught. A guard stopped 3 feet from where I was buried under a layer of fern. I could smell the wood smoke on his skin and the sour tang of fermented food in his breath. I didn't dare move. I didn't breathe. I just gripped a jagged piece of volcanic rock and waited for him to look down. My mind flashed back to the training exercise in Georgia, the sergeant screaming that silence is a weapon. I realized I wasn't just hiding. I was hunting. He eventually spat into the dirt and walked away. I tracked them back to the village. Behind the main huts, I found cages. 15 people were in there. That's where I met Mary. She was a nurse from Cleveland who'd been snatched from a taxi. We whispered through the bars at 3 a.m. They call them the professors, she told me. One of them, a man with a silver watch, he sat in front of my cage for an hour. He talked to me about his grandchildren while he decided if I was fresh enough for the next hunt. I told her I was in the US military. I saw a light come back into her eyes. Not hope, but a dangerous white hot glow. I told her I couldn't free her yet. I needed the plane. We waited for the rain, that heavy, blinding Indian Ocean monsoon that turns the world into a wall of white noise. I moved through the first hut. My knife felt heavy and cold in my hand. I worked quickly, the blade finding the soft spots with the wet, muted efficiency. I didn't think about the men. I thought about the red sneaker. It made the work easier. I was in the 8th hut when a younger guard woke up. He saw the blood on my fatigues and let out a shriek that woke the island. The village erupted. I led them into the dark using the terrain I'd mapped for days. One by one, I pulled them into the shadows. I tackled the last guard into the red mud, my weight pinning him down. I didn't just kill him, I watched the life go out of his eyes, wondering if he even knew what he was dying for. I went back to the cages and handed Mary the knife. The elders are left, I said. I'm done. Mary didn't hesitate. She took the blade, her fingers brushing mine. They were steady, cold as ice. She looked at the main hut, then went back to the survivors. Not just the elders, she said. The files. I saw where they keep the ledgers. She didn't wait for my approval. She turned and walked toward the leader's hut. For the next 10 minutes, I sat in the rain and listened. When she finally emerged, she was carrying a leather-bound book and the knife. Her face was a mask of red, and her eyes were clear. She had chosen this. The plane landed the next morning, a white Cessna. We had the trap set. The survivors were back in the cages, doors unlocked, holding sharpened bamboo pikes. I was in the blind with Mary. Two men and a woman stepped out of the jeep that was parked by the strip, laughing and drinking from crystal glasses. One of the men, the one with the silver watch, walked up to the cages. He smiled, adjusted his watch, and began to urinate on a 6-year-old boy through the bars. That was a signal. The survivors exploded out of the cages. Mary tackled the woman, smashing her head against the iron bars. I went for the men. They were clients. Evil, arrogant men who thought they were untouchable because of their bank accounts. They found out that money doesn't stop a sharpened branch from finding your throat. One of them tried to offer me his watch. I just stared at him until he realized it didn't matter. I boarded the plane. The pilot was asleep in the cockpit. I put my knife into the soft meat behind his ear. "Diego Garcia," I whispered. "If I see a single patrol boat, you're the first one I bleed." We landed at a military base 2 hours later. I expected the cavalry. I expected a medal. Instead, I was met by men in suits that cost more than my house. They didn't ask about Mary. They didn't ask about the children. They asked for my camera. They asked for the dollar bill. I was held in a windowless room for 10 days. There was no clock, only the hum of the fluorescent lights. I sat there, staring at the white walls, feeling the dried blood under my fingernails that no amount of scrubbing could get out. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back in the mud. I thought about Mary. They'd taken her away in a separate black SUV. She'd kept the ledger hidden in her clothes. I really hoped she'd found a way to keep it. On the 10th day, the man in the charcoal suit came back. He leaned in so close I could smell peppermint gum on his breath. "It's a long walk back to the parking lot, Sergeant," he whispered, his voice smooth and terrifyingly calm. "It'd be a shame if you didn't have a pension to spend when you got there." They made all the survivors sign NDAs and gave them new identities. They told us the island was a hallucination caused by the brine. They erased the island from the maps, just like they erased the people who died there. But every night, I still see the witness in his blue jeans and his clean polo shirt. He's standing in my dreams, hands in his pockets, nodding at me. When I wake up, the air in my bedroom feels thick, smelling of wet vegetation and rot. I look at my hands, and for a second, I can still feel the black sand, jagged, hot, and impossible to wash away.